Awesome. I think we are live. So I'll just get started then. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. We're beyond grateful to have each and every one of you all today. My name is Najma Usman, and I will be the MC. I joined CARE Washington a little over a year and a half ago, originally as a community organizer, and now I work with the Legal and Policy Department as a Youth and Advocacy Coordinator, directly working on various policy initiatives and working groups to ensure our voices are heard. To start off the program today, we originally planned for Imam Sufyan Sen to recite an opening dua and share a hopeful message with us. Unfortunately, Imam Sen will no longer be joining us today due to a janazah in his family. So instead, I hope that we could spend the next minute or so making dua for his family and his loved one who has passed. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. May Allah grant his family shifa, sabr, and strength to get through these difficult times. May Allah forgive their loved ones and elevate their station among those who are guided and send him along the path of those who came before. May Allah forgive us and them. May Allah enlarge their grave and shed light upon it and heal the broken hearts of all those who have lost loved ones, and have mercy upon us all. Allahumma ameen. Now I will be introducing our executive director, who joined us from CARE Arizona after 10 years of service, rebuilding the chapter and serving as the executive director there. Imran has been a leading voice in the age of social media, such as starting the No Ban, No Wall campaign, as well as leading many nationally and globally recognized social media campaigns. He has appeared in media outlets across the world for his commentary and thoughts on a wide array of issues. He's also written extensively on the subjects of Islamophobia and issues impacting American Muslims. So please join me in welcoming Imran Siddiqui.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much, Najma, for that introduction. And I just echo the dua for Imam Sufyan's family member. May Allah accept them and elevate their status. And, it's an unfortunate, sort of downside to the event. Inshallah, everything will allow their family to heal. But wanted to welcome everybody today. Jazakallah khair for coming. I'm so excited to be spending my first Ramadan in Washington State. For those who don't know me, I'm Imran Siddiqui. I'm the executive director of CARE Washington State. I joined back in October technically, but I moved to Washington State at the end of December. So really fortunate to spend this blessed month with this entire community, even though we've been socially distanced and not being able to get out there in the community as much as we would have liked to. It's just amazing to see the level of engagement and dedication of this community. Me and my family have visited a few different masajid throughout the month, and just being out there, just to seeing the level of engagement with this community is really, truly inspiring. So I'm really excited to introduce the program today, Our Path Forward, What's at Stake this Ramadan, because it gives us an opportunity to benefit from the immense blessings of this month. We're on the cusp of the most blessed 10 nights of Ramadan. These are the most blessed nights of the entire year. And so we're truly privileged to hear from a world-renowned scholar like Ustada Aisha Prime, who will help us put things into perspective as we close out this blessed month on a high note. But you're also going to hear from our amazing work that CARE Washington does to stand up for our deen, our Muslim brothers and sisters across the state. And you're going to hear that especially from some of our amazing team members. So I just wanted to sort of kick off the program today, talking a little about CARE, if we could bring up the slide, about just how great CARE Washington has been doing over the course of the past few years, just to give you some perspective in terms of how we're doing. And alhamdulillah, the Muslim community is fortunate to have a CARE chapter that has such a long history of activism and accomplishments, whether it's standing for the marginalized, media accountability, or building bridges between different communities. CARE Washington State's been around for almost 2 decades now, and you can see just through this chart here that this chapter has really grown a lot over these past few years. In 2021, we're projected to have a budget of around $900,000. If you look back, 5-6 years ago, it was about $300,000-$400,000. So you can see that there's growth that's taking place in this Washington State Muslim community. And just a growth in budget doesn't mean anything, but we're actually, a people-powered organization. We talk a lot about, building our masajid. We talk about building our schools, but rarely as Muslims do we talk about building people. And that is something that CARE Washington State has done over the course of the years. We proudly can say that there's people in the state legislature who are working in the legal staff right now who are former CARE Washington interns. You have people in law school right now at UW, for example, who are former CARE Washington interns, for example. And people who are leaders in nonprofit organizations throughout the state have come through CARE Washington. So you should really, as a community, be proud of the fact that we have been able to build such a great pipeline over the years. And I always say this is not about one person, and especially not this one person here because I'm new to the chapter, but you can see this is a linear progression over time. We stand on the shoulders of giants within this local community who have put in the time, put in the work, who've gone through the state to really make this a great organization. And we're just continuing that work. And that's evidenced by the brilliant team that we have here at CARE Washington. So definitely take that with you. If you learn something today about this, is that we need to build a strong, set of activists and attorneys and people who are media savvy within this community, and CARE Washington is the best organization that is leveraged to do that. And I'll kick it to the next slide here, just talking about a few of the things that we've done over the course of the past year. This is pretty amazing. If you look at this, alhamdulillah, like we're in the midst of a pandemic where you see a downturn there. Everybody has obviously been hit hard by the pandemic, and our work has been affected. We've not been able to get out there in person, but it's an amazing testament to see just how great the work CARE Washington has done, whether it's those media mentions that you see there, about 55 that we track there. It's probably a lot more if you look at it like as individuals being mentioned in the media as well. You could probably say we're close to, even close to 100 with the amount of times that we're mentioned in the media. If you look at one of the key aspects of what our strategic plan is for this year, we want to become a true statewide organization. CARE Washington represents Muslims all over the state of Washington. Even though we're based out of the Seattle metro area, you can see that there's issues that pop up all over the state. None of this is evidenced better than our Muslim Days of the Capital, where we had 32 cities represented at MDAC. I know a lot of you who are attended this great event earlier this year, and this was representatives from Spokane, from Vancouver, from Bellingham, from Yakima, for example. And you'll hear, about one of our team members who is representing Central Washington as well. We facilitated 61 meetings with our legislative officials during this MDAC. So even though we're doing this virtual, it in some ways was a blessing because we were just able to attend so many different meetings and engage our community members. And that's really something that you all should hang your hat on, because our success is based off of your success and your support. Our legal team, just talking quickly about that, 168 requests for help from our community members. Imagine for a second that there was no CARE Washington in the state today. What would the Muslim community do without a CARE Washington present today? And that's a really good question that we have to contend with, because we have Brianna, who you'll hear from a little bit later today, our staff attorney and legal policy manager. And we have Jim, who's doing our legal and policy coordinator as well, who does our intakes and helps with a lot of our legal work as well. We're fielding all of these calls, and look at that last statistic. Not only are we fielding these calls for help from the community, but 84% of the legal cases that we took in 2020 were completed. So we come to some sort of resolution. And we are, and I just want to reiterate this, the only Muslim organization who are offering full legal services pro bono in Washington State for our community. So it's extremely important to support the work that CARE Washington is doing here today. So with that being said, I just wanted to welcome you to this great event. I'll be back a little bit later to talk about how you can support the work that CARE Washington is doing. So stay tuned. We have some really exciting speakers, and thank you for attending. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Imran. Imran is a great example of how our team is shifting and growing, and our next speaker will also be talking about how our work has expanded and increased with this growth. Our staff attorney and legal policy manager at CARE Washington, Brianna Ofrey, specializes in using creative, legal, and grassroots advocacy solutions to represent discriminated individuals and address systemic issues facing the American Muslim community, including racial profiling, harassment and bullying in schools and workplaces, visa and citizenship delays, police misconduct, hate crimes, national security and travel issues, as well as employment discrimination, amongst others. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Brianna Ofrey.
Thank you so much, Najma. It's so nice to be back with all of you celebrating my second Ramadan with CARE Washington. When I joined the team a year ago, I never imagined that we'd still be operating remotely at this point, but thanks to my work with the legal and policy team, I've still been able to meet and work with a lot of you this year, even if only virtually. And in fact, I may have actually had the opportunity to meet and work with more of you this year, thanks to the ability to be accessible virtually through programming and remote services than I might have been able to otherwise. And I'm really grateful for that. One of the unexpected blessings of this year has been that it's pushed CARE Washington to develop a robust remote infrastructure for working with staff, legal clients, lawmakers, and partners from truly all over the state. As Imran mentioned, these advancements, among others, have allowed us to become a truly statewide organization this year. While we of course look forward to the day when we can hold events like this one in person again, because believe me, I hear you guys can cook and I really cannot wait to try it. This virtual setting has really allowed us to put on some phenomenal programming this year that is both geographically and physically accessible, like our Muslim Days at the Capitol. Katie, can you turn to our MDAC by the numbers slide? Thank you. I know our past participants will likely say that there's still nothing quite like being in Olympia and sitting face to face with your lawmakers, but our first full week completely virtual MDAC allowed us to reach so many more of our community members across the state. With the ability to literally lobby from your living room, try saying that 3 times fast. We had more than 100 participants from 27 different districts across our state who weren't limited by geography, disability, work schedules, or childcare. They were able to tune in between classes and meetings to hear from our governor and attorney general, and to urge their senators and representatives to take action on an incredibly ambitious slate of 11 legislative bills. In a way, these circumstances pushed our organization to find a way to truly democratize our community engagement and advocacy. And we plan to continue to prioritize these values, even once it becomes safe to gather again, inshallah. Katie, can you flip to our coalition slide, please? In addition to the 11 bills from our MDAC legislative agenda, which spanned issues from police reform to COVID relief and equity and oversight in private and government uses of technology, CARE Washington's policy and outreach staff have been tireless in their coalition building efforts and advocacy on issues such as fighting the Muslim ban and passing the No Ban Act, holding the Biden administration accountable on promises for systemic immigration reform, pushing our national and state governments to acknowledge and take steps to end the Uyghur genocide and to protect our local Uyghur populations, ensuring census and voter protection and equity, creating financial inclusion opportunities for Muslim and immigrant-owned small businesses, and combating anti-Black racism and white supremacy in our institutions, our communities, and ourselves. Our strength in this advocacy as an organization comes not only from our staff's expertise and experience and our ability to organize grassroots support from all of you, but also in large part from our ability to build and leverage intersectional alliances and support from other religious organizations, civil liberties groups, immigrant and refugee rights organizations, consumer and worker rights groups, and other progressive allies. CARE Washington is a respected partner in the Washington advocacy community, and as such has been a strong and steadfast voice for Muslims across Washington state. We are regularly asked to serve on government advisory boards, such as the Attorney General's Hate Crimes Working Group and the Port of Seattle's Biometrics External Advisory Group, from where we can directly influence and shape the laws and policies that affect you most. These alliances help us to become aware of and remain ahead of emerging policies as well, so that we can keep you informed, so we can shape the discourse around important issues, and so that we can rally support or opposition as necessary. This is a slide I'm really excited about. This 2021 legislative session in particular has been one of the most successful yet for CARE Washington and our allies. We are so fortunate to live in a state where our elected officials value the input and concerns of Muslim organizations and communities. Our team is acutely aware of this privilege, so we fight twice as hard for changes on behalf of Muslims in our state, because we know that change here can create ripples of change for Muslims across the country. Of 15 total bills that our policy team tracked, educated the community on, provided testimony for, met with our legislators about, and organized support or opposition around, we had an astounding 8 victories this year, which is an absolute record for our organization. And it's a true testament to the tireless work of so many advocates and coalition partners this year. We also owe a tremendous amount of credit to the movements for racial and social justice and the uprisings over police brutality over the last year, which have created a monumental shift in attitudes around systemic racism and white supremacy in this country and around the world. Consequently, we saw greater advancements in social justice policies in just this one legislative session than we have in decades. Of the 5 police reform and accountability bills that CARE Washington advocated on, 4 passed both the House and the Senate and are currently awaiting Governor Inslee's signature. These bills, if signed into law as expected, would address a number of significant issues with police tactics, such as the chokeholds and the no-knock warrants that allowed for the respective police murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. They would create necessary reform of police oversight, investigation, and accountability. While we recognize that we still have such a long way to go towards creating a truly anti-racist system of public safety in this state and in this country, these bills mark immense progress and truly deserve celebration. And we really could not have done this without the input of all of you through our MDAC lobbying. We also had a fantastic set of wins for our tech equity platform this session. Not only did we kill the harmful corporate-friendly Washington Privacy Act for the 3rd year in a row, but we gained notable support for our alternative, the People's Privacy Act, which was built from the ground up with the input and concerns of marginalized and overly surveilled groups like Muslims, immigrants, and Black activists, prioritized front and center. We have to be sure that companies will never have the right to sell data from your prayer or dating apps or any other online information about you without your express permission. Something like data privacy might sound innocuous, but we've seen how data can be used to place people on watch lists or target undocumented immigrants and activists. These are safety issues for Muslims, and our policy team is making sure that your government understands that. We also want to pilot test for our automated decision systems bill this session, which will make sure that if the government is going to use AI or algorithms to make decisions about things like who's receiving public benefits or how long we're sentencing individuals convicted of crimes, that the public not only understands how these machines are making these decisions, but that there's transparency and oversight to ensure that the factors these machines are weighing are truly equitable for our communities. And finally, 2 incredibly hard-fought victories for local immigration policy. The first, which we've advocated on for the last 2 years, is a bill that would streamline the medical licensing process for immigrant medical professionals. This bill, if signed into law as expected, would allow immigrant and refugee doctors to more easily continue practicing medicine in Washington state, and also help address the healthcare provider shortage, particularly in immigrant communities, that has been so clearly illuminated and exacerbated by this past year. And the second bill, which has, alhamdulillah, already been signed into law, will eliminate all private for-profit prisons and detention centers in Washington state, which includes the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma. The Northwest Detention Center is a private ICE detention facility that has been accused of extremely abusive conditions over the years, leading to numerous hunger strikes and even deaths of its immigrant detainees. We believe that no one should ever be incarcerated for seeking safety for themselves or their families, and private corporations definitely shouldn't be profiting from it. So this is just a monumental win for the Washington immigrant community and for the immigrant rights community nationwide. Here in Washington state, approximately 1/3 of residents are immigrants or first-generation family members of immigrants, and that number is even higher in the Muslim community. Katie, can you flip to our legal matters slide, please? As you can see from our 2020 legal matters breakdown, almost a quarter of the intakes we received last year were related to immigration and travel. Next to employment discrimination, immigration is the top legal issue facing our community, and expert immigration advice almost always comes at a steep price. Individuals can often spend years and tens of thousands of dollars trying to complete their citizenship or bring their family members over to the US. And still, oftentimes, Muslim immigrants in particular discover that their cases have been mishandled or denied due to a lack of understanding of cultural practices, family dynamics, or language barriers. That's why we created the CARE Washington Immigrant Rights Center, to provide high quality, language accessible, and culturally competent immigration legal services to individuals of any income level. Because we believe competent, first-rate immigration services should not only be a privilege of the wealthy, and that all people deserve the chance to seek family, safety, and opportunity. Our immigration-trained legal staff will be able to provide assistance with family-based and tourist visa applications, asylum applications, status adjustments, citizenship applications and delays, interview prep, translation, and travel issues, among other services. Over the past 5 years, the Muslim community has been at the center of so many of our country's most contentious immigration policies. And while the Trump administration is now behind us, thankfully, the damage done by these Islamophobic policies and the underlying systemic inequities persist. So we believe that it's imperative that the Muslim community take a leadership role in addressing the real-life impacts of these policies and continue pushing for an equitable immigration system that will allow our immigrant refugee brothers and sisters to prosper and thrive. At CARE Washington's Immigrant Rights Center, in addition to offering all of these immigration legal services that I just mentioned, we're also going to use our legal and policy expertise to challenge unjust laws and policies that marginalize low-income and other vulnerable immigrant communities, and work to advance systemic policy solutions that make it possible for immigrants and their loved ones to thrive. We will foster intersectional alliances with other communities in order to amass the political power necessary to hold decision makers accountable for making real and lasting policy changes. And we will engage the power of story and narrative shaping to shift public debate towards the notion that no matter where a person is born or what religion they practice, everyone has a stake and a constructive role to play in shaping this country's future. Last year, the Immigrant Rights Center was merely a promise. Now we have delivered on that promise, and we need your help to increase the capacity of our legal and policy teams as we take on this expanded area of service for our community. We are currently in the process of hiring a second staff attorney, as Imran mentioned, so that we can provide one full-time specially trained immigration attorney specifically for our Immigrant Rights Center and one full-time attorney for our Civil Rights Department. CARE Washington's Immigrant Rights Center is the only designated legal team in the entire Northwest providing these immigration services specifically to the Muslim community. So we're going to need your help in order to sustain the work of this center and grow its capacity. I look so forward to embarking on this venture together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brianna, for that in-depth analysis on the work that we do. Now that you've heard from Brianna from many of our policy wins and the work that we've been up to for the past year, we will now broadcast a video highlighting some of the legal victories we've had over this year. And Katie, our tech wizard, is going to be doing that in a second.
Today, we're here to speak to you about a disturbing incident that took place aboard an Alaska Airlines flight on February 17th of this year. On a flight headed from Seattle Tacoma Airport to San Francisco, two Muslim men were reported for suspicious text messages that were being sent in Arabic. Even though this was the case, the person did not understand what they were saying. They reported the individuals to a crew member, and our clients were removed from the flight. After it was determined that no threat existed, these men were subjected to further humiliation, where passengers were deplaned to the area where these men were questioned by the TSA and the FBI, as well as cargo from the plane being screened, and the lavatory tanks from the plane also being emptied as well.
These people, they are watching us and watching what is happening, because we are sitting on the first class and they are in the back of the airplane. So what these people, they are going to think about Muslim people? What these people, they are going to think about the Black people?
Then when we were in the gate area being interrogated and the rest of the passengers were leaving the airplane, everybody saw us. We could feel the heat of anger coming off of everyone, like they were disgusted with us.
But this is 20 plus years building against the Muslim community, and it's about time that this type of profiling stops. You know, we're viewed as a threat first, and as upstanding citizens second.
Thank you, Katie. As you saw from that video, the work that our legal department does is crucial to sustaining the Muslim community here in Washington State. As a 501c3, CARE Washington provides free legal services to Muslims who've been discriminated against. I'm going to pass the mic to Imran, who will highlight the importance of financially supporting us so that we can continue doing the work to protect the civil liberties of Muslims across our state.
Jazakallah khair, Najma and Brianna, who outlined this amazing legal team that we have and the work that we've been doing over the course of this past year. So I'm really proud of this team that I'm a part of, and just proud to be part of this Washington State Muslim community. This video was really inspiring. I'm glad that we ended on that positive note there with Ramadan's story, because you don't always see these things. Like, you don't always see the outcomes that CARE Washington produces. Like, a lot of people have the perceptions that CARE Washington is just out there on, in the news all the time and sort of like doing press conferences. But a lot of the work that we do is behind the scenes, stories like this. Jim was the person that took the call on this story, and he literally sprung into action as soon as he heard about it, trying, calling different people to try and fix this issue. And, on these other stories, Brianna has been on the front lines and, just fighting for these clients on a day-to-day basis. So you don't really see this day-to-day work, but trust that CARE Washington is always there for this community. It's important to understand that. And, if we can pull up the slide here, I just want to talk a little bit about, the financial situation, bringing into this Ramadan. Of course, we're in this for an amazing event with, Sheikh Aisha Prime, which is coming up soon, but we also want to talk about just the work that we're doing and what our goals are as well. I mean, I showed you a little bit earlier that we have a goal of growing this organization. We're not growing just for the sake of growing. As we continue to spread throughout the course of the state and, grow our legal practice, the needs of the Muslim community come to the forefront exponentially. So it's not as though one lawyer is enough to suffice the Muslim community. We found that. I mean, 168 calls for help, that's not enough for one attorney to be handling and researching and doing all this work, filing cases and doing this paperwork. That is one attorney for the entire state of Washington. And that's just one area of our practice. So alhamdulillah, we've been able to, make good on this promise of the Immigrants' Rights Center that we're going to be launching very soon. We're in the process of interviewing for that second attorney. So this is all an accomplishment of the Washington State Muslim community. So really be proud of that. But I want to reiterate that this is an organization that is funded by the state, the people in the state who are sitting here. We're not funded by CARE National or a national office or outside money. We're funded by this local Muslim community. And this is, we are like the armor of the Washington State Muslim community. So we need to be at our strongest level in order to be successful. So we set a goal out for this Ramadan for $150,000 to raise, and that's just gonna, push us closer to our goal and continuing to grow this organization to fill those needs that we have. We see that there's systemic issues that exist throughout the state, whether it's, police brutality, whether it's, attempts at voter suppression and things of that nature. We need people who are going to be on the front lines fighting for these issues. So that's what our goal is for this month. You can see so far we've raised about 20,000 that's come in to CARE Washington so far. So we're here at the cusp of these final 10 days of Ramadan, and we need your help to get to this goal. We're obviously not going to be doing it masjid style here, where I'm going to ask you to raise hands and things of that nature. If you want to raise your hand, that's completely fine as well. But you don't have to, you don't necessarily have to even donate today. We just want people to stand up and say, I want to support CARE Washington this Ramadan. So even if you want to pledge, let's say you want to pledge $10,000, but you want to, maybe get the rewards of making that pledge during this Ramadan, making your intention to make that pledge this Ramadan, and maybe pay later in the year. Maybe your cash flow situation is a little bit different. You can do that, no worries. We don't need you to make that specific donation right now, but at least make a pledge, make the intention, and let us know, because we want to call that out and show that our community is there to support us. We are, just think about, I want to talk real quick about this. If you look at these legal cases, I asked if there was no CARE chapter here in Washington State, if somebody had to go to a private attorney, let's say if their door is knocked on by the FBI, for example, I've heard attorneys charging upwards of $2,500 for a letter just to the FBI to get them off their client's back. So CARE Washington is providing this service free of charge to ensure that our community is not being unfairly targeted or on these fishing expeditions and so on and so forth. If you go to a private lawyer for any of these issues, you can even look at the legal work that we do. Like if you go to a private attorney for any of these issues, it's going to charge $250 to $500 per hour for this kind of work. So consider even donating an hour or 2 hours. If you say $250 an hour is going to buy 1 hour of free legal service for this community, suppose you want to donate 4 hours, that's $1,000 right there. I mean, that is going to benefit people in this community who can't afford to pay for these legal services. So just think about that. The work that we do in the media is amazing as well. You know, Jess and Katie have done an amazing job. You can see by these amazing graphics and the work that we're doing out there, getting these media mentions and representing our community on the front lines. That is not due to one person, it's due to a team that is there and dedicated. And one thing I want to reiterate is that this team in Washington State is super motivated. They, you know, wake up every day motivated. They're coming to work and like, you know, they're excelling, not just like showing up and doing this work. We have an excelling team that's here. So you want to continue to nurture this team and make that grow. Just to talk about a few different ways, and you can drop those pledges, you know, if you want to make a pledge. I'll start off today. I'll say I'm going to donate $1,000 inshallah this year. So somebody from the crowd match them in the comments. Inshallah, we can get a few people to donate on this webinar today. There's a few different ways that you can donate. So you can do it through the donation links that are in the chat right now. You can do it, you know, on Facebook. We have Facebook fundraisers going on right now. You can become a monthly donor. So suppose you want to donate like $1,000, but you want to spend $83 a month instead of $1,000 at one time. You can do that as well. We do accept stock donations as well. So some of you get stock options and donations, and if they go up, then you don't want to pay those you know, capital gains taxes. You're paying Uncle Sam what, 20-25% on those capital gains. Give it to an organization that you know is going to do the job on the front lines. We have a brokerage account through TD Ameritrade, and you know, we can accept stock donations as well. CARE Washington is tax deductible, as we said, 501c3, Zakat eligible, being out there on the front lines, you know, defending the rights of the Muslim community. So you can give your Zakat donations to CARE as well. There's tons of other ways. If you work at, you know, any of these companies, Microsoft, Intel, you know, any of these huge tech companies that are out there, there's usually employee matching programs that are out there as well. So that $150,000 shouldn't be a hard number to reach. If you get 75 people who are working in the tech industry donating $1,000 and getting that match, that's easy to reach that $150,000. So we'll continue to tally up these donations that are coming in throughout the course of the day. I'll check back in with you in just a few minutes. Please, you know, consider making that donation. We really need your help during this month of Ramadan. This is the most blessed time of the year. Last 10 nights are coming up. We know that, you know, some of you will be making those donations in the final 10 nights as well. So we're cognizant of that, but consider donating today to help us reach that goal. And I'll be back soon. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Imran. As we spoke about earlier, our team at CARE Washington is growing. We now have 9 staff members, including 3 managers running our media, legal and policy, and programs and operations departments, as well as 2 new fellows. We've also grown our board to now include a total of 7 board members who together bring a diversity of professional experience and personal experience like nothing we've ever seen. We're lucky to have one of our board members join us today, a professor and an education policy expert with extensive experience working with community-based organizations and coalitions that work to strengthen the voices of disenfranchised communities to promote a more just society. She's passionate about closing the achievement gap in education, empowering refugee and immigrant communities, and breaking down the systemic barriers to opportunity. Moreover, she is committed to working to address the root causes of injustice, building power, and creating equitable change in her community. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Nimco Bilale.
Thank you so much, Najma. Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Kareem. My name is Nimco Bilale. I want to take a moment to thank you all for being with us today. I'd like to start off with a land and life acknowledgement. We are gathered this afternoon on stolen and occupied indigenous land of the Coast Salish people, including the Duwamish tribes who are still fighting to become a federally recognized nation. For generations, indigenous communities across the Americas have demonstrated resilience and resistance in the face of violent efforts to separate them from their land, culture, and each other. Yet, they remain at the forefront of movements to protect Mother Earth and the life it sustains. Acknowledgement is a critical and necessary step toward honoring Native communities and having a larger conversation on decolonization and reconciliation. I would like to also acknowledge the many lives past and present that have sought out creating a collective impact on the communities and environments we occupy. I come to you as a United States citizen, a country that stole generations of Black people from the continent of Africa and has yet to reckon with the violence of chattel slavery. I invite you to take a moment of silence to consider your own relationship with this land and your ancestors, and to honor the ones that have fought and are still fighting for recognition and humanity. My name is Nimco Bilale, and I serve on the board of CARE Washington. While I'm new to the board, I'm not new to the work that CARE WA has done in defending our rights at the state and local level. I was first introduced to CARE Washington as an undergraduate student at the University of Washington and have been a part of the CARE Washington community ever since, mostly as an observer, but I'm so excited to be taking more active steps now. I was born in Somalia. My family fled soon after I was born because of the Civil War. I'm proud to have lived in Washington State, and more specifically in South King County, for over 25 years. I've been inspired by the diversity of our Muslim community and truly believe that we are our most powerful when we recognize that our strengths are with each other. This is one of the many reasons I joined CARE WA's board, because I want to build a community where all people, regardless of their race, religion, or ethnicity, can be proud of who they are. I want to send a powerful message that we must not let fear and hate divide and separate us. I'm proud of the work that CARE WA has done to defend our rights before the pandemic when the Muslim ban was implemented. And I'm especially proud of CARE Washington's leadership, hard work, and dedication during these challenging and uncertain times. Over the past 5 years, the Muslim community has been at the center of many of our country's most contentious immigration policies. The executive order that prohibited citizens from Muslim majority countries from entering the United States suspended the entry of all refugees for 120 days and barred Syrian refugees indefinitely. While the Trump administration is behind us, the damage done by its Islamophobic policies and the underlying systemic inequities persist. Furthermore, this past year has been amongst the most difficult for this country, especially for those on the front lines defending our civil rights and justice. Our country's fighting two pandemics, the COVID-19 pandemic, which has taken the lives of more than 581,000 Americans, disproportionately impacting people of color, and systemic racism, which has claimed the lives and livelihoods of countless Black men and women over the course of generations. Being a Black woman in America is complicated and sometimes deadly on a multiplicity of intersecting levels. But being an advocate and a leader in the forefront has given me the strength to not only be present for myself, but for my family and my community. I'm proud to serve as a board member of CARE Washington and to keep building a civil rights organization that not only defends our American Muslim community, but that defends all Americans regardless of race or religion, and a grassroots organization that shares a mutual self-interest of justice, respect, and peace. Let's make sure that CARE Washington continues to rise and continues to be a leading civil rights organization. We are as strong as our civil rights organizations are. We can have our masjids, we can have our schools, and we can have our charities, but without organizations like CARE Washington to stand with other organizations like the ACLU and the NAACP to protect our freedoms and our liberty, we are vulnerable. I ask you to please donate generously if you are able. Thank you so much, and Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Nimco, for that powerful message. CARE Washington is committed to doing that work of undoing systemic racism and working constantly to do what we can to alleviate those injustices by advocating for policies to uplift marginalized voices. So I think I speak for everyone when I say that we are really excited to have you a part of our team. I am beyond thankful for our team here at CARE Washington. They go above and beyond, working to ensure our rights are upheld and work around the clock fighting for us all. In fact, Next up, joining me will be the rest of the CareWash staff who will introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about why they enjoy the work they do. And I think the first person we have will be Aiden Anwar.
Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aiden and I'm the Community Outreach Fellow at CARE Washington, and I currently live in Yakima. I've been with the organization for 4 months now, and my job as a Community Outreach Fellow is to increase CARE Washington's presence across Washington State by connecting and collaborating with community organizations and mosques in Central and Eastern Washington to uplift CARE's mission. One example of the type of work I was really proud of was recently giving a presentation to elementary school educators on Islam and Muslims and explaining cultural or religious sensitivities so that they can better accommodate needs for their Muslim students. And I'll give the torch to Brianna.
Thank you, Aiden. As you know, my name is Brianna O'Fray, and I'm the Legal and Policy Manager and Staff Attorney at CARE Washington. And I've been with CARE Washington for just a little over a year now, but I've been in the CARE Network for almost 2 years. And in my role, I lead both our legal and our grassroots advocacy work, which we really try to approach holistically. We not only offer legal representation to individuals who have been discriminated against, but we also work to share knowledge and shape policies that we hope will one day eliminate the need for such representation. One way in which we're really excited to be leading on this work right now is through our new Rights Kit podcast, In the Know, which will be available starting next month. And I will pass it to Imran.
Assalamu alaikum, Imran Siddiqui. I think you've heard a lot from me so far, but I will go ahead and introduce myself. Executive Director, so I'm out there meeting the community members, getting to know what you need from CARE Washington State, and out there in the media and just helping guide this chapter into the next generation. And I will pass it to Jess.
I knew I was going to forget to unmute myself. Hi, my name is Jessica Schreindel, and I'm the Media Manager at CARE Washington. I've been with the organization for a little over 3 years now. And as the Media Manager, I work with my team to empower Muslims across Washington State by challenging dominant narratives and working to use storytelling for empowering people. We do this a couple different ways. We work to uplift the voices of the Muslim community. We work with the press to push them for real representation. And we work to give our community the tools that they need to tell their own stories. One of the things that I'm most proud of is the recent work we did around the census. We created a video series that featured local leaders from different communities talking about the importance of the census and encouraging people to fill it out. So that's a project that I was really proud of our team for doing. And with that, I will pass it to Jim.
Thanks, Jess. My name is Jim Maher. I've been with the organization for 6 years now. I'm the Legal and Policy Coordinator, and my job is to gather the facts and information necessary to help our attorneys build the cases that help them fight for your rights. You saw a great example of what I do in the video you saw just a little while ago. I gathered the information needed to help Ms. Mohammed recover the $13,000 that was seized from her by CBP when she was traveling to meet her injured son. I will pass this along to Katie. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Walker, and I'm the Media and Data Coordinator at CARE Washington. I started this past September to cover Jessica's maternity leave, and I liked it so much that when Imran, Noor, and Jessica asked me to stay on, I agreed without hesitating. Now, I run CARE Washington's social media accounts, I manage our database, and I create graphics and other cool things that we get to put out, like those victories videos you all just saw. Jess put together the script and storyboard, and I got to illustrate, design, and edit everything together. And as you have probably gathered, I've been behind the scenes here, moving panelists around, screen sharing, and running our live stream. And next up is Nejma.
Thank you. My name is Nejma, and I am the Youth and Advocacy Coordinator here at CARE Washington, also the MC for the evening. One of the things I am most proud of is expanding our youth work and the creation of our Youth Advisory Committee. because I believe that centering our youth is crucial to sustaining ourselves as an organization, and that the youth are the truth. So I will pass it to Noor, Dr. Noor.
Thanks, Najma. Salam, everyone. My name is Noor. I'm the Senior Programs and Operations Manager at CARE Washington. I've been here a little over 2 years now, and my job is to make sure our office is running smoothly and that folks on staff have the support they need to further our mission. My favorite thing about my job is writing about the amazing work our team does in grant applications.
Awesome. Thank you, Noor. I believe that was everyone. Our next segment is with our keynote speaker, Executive Director of Barakah Incorporated, an organization committed to training Muslim women in traditional Islamic sciences with a focus on modern application. She has spent her life as an educator, artist, activist, and entrepreneur, committed to the goal of empowering Muslim women to rise above challenges. Recently known for her participation in the National Women's March and the courses she teaches on traditional knowledge, the challenges of race and gender in the Muslim community, and spirituality. I am honored to introduce Sheikha Aisha Prime.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for inviting me and for allowing me to be present at this gathering and to be able to even speak on behalf of CARE. I am deeply honored. Just listening to all of you go through exactly what you have, what you're proud of, the work that you're doing. And it's interesting because you're not talking about work that you've done that was so much beneficial to yourself, but that which was going to benefit the society. And that's just something that when I think about CARE, that's exactly what comes to mind. The organization that is an advocate for others, making sure that they get exactly what it is that they need, that which is get their rights. And so with that being said, I just want to, again, thank CARE for the work that they're doing. I want to thank CARE not only for their advocacy, but also for the education. As I listen to the stories about even teaching in libraries and teaching in public schools to let teachers understand who are Muslims, different from what they may see on television, but who are they in reality? That this is huge, important work. And so when I go back to the title of this session called Our Path Forward, What's at Stake this Ramadan? Our path, when we look at this our path, like this collective responsibility, it goes back to when Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Holy Quran, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope of Allah and do not be divided. Meaning that if you're going to hold on to that which is going to give you elevation, that which is going to give you success, that which is going to be a means by which you progress into a better society, you've got to do it together. And you've got to do it together by not being divided, whether that be upon race or gender or status, economic status or ethnicity. In order to move that forward, you've got to come together. And so looking at this concept, I want to go into a little bit of detail for a moment about what's our path. Because this is something that when we're talking about Islam, the concept of the path is extremely important. The prayer that we say over 17 times a day, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, guide me on the straight path, is something that for the Muslim is essential. It's foundational. It's exactly about who we are to our core. And so our path, first and foremost, is to remove the rock from the road. That when the Prophet ﷺ, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, mentioned that which is the least of faith, the smallest aspect of connecting to God, you've got to remove the rock from the road. Meaning that if there is an obstacle that is standing in the way of humanity's path forward, then you have to be that person that gives them access to their rights. You've got to be the person that literally what it says is to give them access to the water. Meaning if there's something that's keeping them thirsty, keeping them hungry, keeping them away from that which they need, then you've got to remove the rock in the road. That's our path, that's our job. And then looking at the next one, the way of when we say, you know, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, what is the straight path? Is it just that I move the rock in the road, or is there a methodology to it? Is there a criteria for it, right? Of course. And when we look at the criteria of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, number one, in order to remove the rock in the road, you actually have to care. You actually have to have some level of concern. You have to be concerned and take the responsibility that this care and concern must be done something about. It's not that you just look over your shoulder and say, well, you know, that's too bad for them, right? Or I hope they'll figure that out. But it's the kind of care, it's the kind of compassion that actually requires deep and consistent and constant action. Mustaqim comes from iqama, like it got to be consistent in this care, in this compassion. You've got to do it on a regular basis, making sure that whatever comes up, whatever crops up and becomes an obstacle in the way of humanity moving forward to access their needs and their basic rights and their foundational needs, you've got to be the one who removes that. The next one is the path of knowledge, the path of understanding the principles and the laws of the universe and the principles and the laws that relate to the human being. So when I hear that care is giving access to knowledge, whether that be again through teaching, giving teachers sensitivity and cultural training so that they understand Muslims, that they need education about what they believe, or whether that be reading stories at the library, or whether that help people understand about what's beneficial for them in the census. What's the reason and the purpose for it? How are you not going to be counted unless you actually say, I'm included, I'm here, I'm present. You don't have permission to overlook me. You don't have permission to ignore my very existence. And so this knowledge is important because when we know better, we're able to do better. So the last aspect of what is our path says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawamuna biqisti shuhada'a lillah. Oh, you who believe, be consistent, be found it being like your existence. This is who you are. Kunu, this is who you are. Be consistently standing up for justice as witnesses for Allah. What is this verse saying? You can't claim to be a believer. You can't claim to be someone who says that I bear witness that there's none worthy of worship except the Almighty, that I acknowledge the Almighty's presence. You can't be a person who says that I have faith and you're not concerned about this social justice. Because when we look at the way of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, one of the most significant things about his way is that he's always being concerned about racial justice and equality. That he's always making sure that the Barakas and the Zayd, and of course the Bilal ibn Rabah, those who have a stone placed upon their chest, or those who have a foot being placed upon their neck, that not only is that stone removed, but those who put it there, that they must be held to account, that they must be responsible. And it doesn't end there. And now how are we going to have a restorative justice that gives the victim back their rights, gives the victim back their dignity? And then we're going to work to change the social framework, the foundational understanding that led to that kind of oppression to begin with. Then when we look at the social justice that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, what he did as it relates to gender justice. to speak, to advocate for, and to intervene in matters of gender-based harm. That when he made it legal, that he made legal changes to the understanding of the society, for this is foundationally wrong for you to strike a woman or a child. And if you do so, if you harm them, there are consequences for that. And then he worked to change the social framework that made that kind of harm possible. Then when we look, of course, at the level of mercy, that all this stems, when we look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, he's known as Rahmatul Alameen. Rahmatul Alameen means that he's a mercy to mankind. He is a mercy to humanity. That the kind of social justice that he would advocate for, the brand that he would use, would not be the brand that would be the firebrand, that it would burn up everything and just scorch the earth and leave everyone else to figure it out. He's not just in the business of calling people out, but he's in the business of calling them into their highest self. Saying that, let me not just connect you to your own humanity, but to connect you to God Almighty, which then says that you're greater than your current circumstance. You're more worthy than what your inherent value is, more than what anyone around you is claiming, that you belong to a higher purpose. And so during this Ramadan, when Ramadan literally coming from the term heat, because during the month of Ramadan, at that in the era of that time, that mostly Ramadan would come in the time of heat. But this is also about the heat of sacrifice, that you're going to feel it. And so we all know that as we're fasting in the month of Ramadan, you're going to feel those pangs of hunger. You're going to feel what it means to be tired and exhausted. You're going to feel the work that you must do in order to connect to that path, in order to have a real and authentic and a consistent type of connection to that path that creates lasting change. You know, recently, we're now coming into the 20th. There is a beautiful narration. The other day on the 17th, we were all in celebration of the Battle of Badr. The first military success that was won by Prophet Muhammad against those who were deeply rooted in oppression, who were deeply rooted in the concept of my way or the highway. And so the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, saying that you cannot continue to usurp these people's rights without them standing up against you. So there's one in this narration knowing that he is the leader of this group. There's only between them one camel in this group of three that he's with. And so they're taking turns. One of them rides and the other two walk, and then they would switch and that one would ride and the other two would walk. And so they say to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, listen, you're our leader. We can walk and you can ride. Like, we're fine with that. And he looks at them and he says, do you think that you're a stronger walker than me? Meaning, don't put me such on a high pedestal that you think that I should be entitled to a certain type of privilege that keeps me from walking with my fellow man. Then he says to them, and I am not in less need of blessing than you. Meaning that even though you look at me on a certain level with a certain status, that I also am in need of this blessings, literally putting himself at the same level as those he is standing with. Meaning he's not the type of leader, and this is important in understanding, he's not the type of leader that says, I lead from the back. He's not the type of leader that says, I will give you instruction and tell you what to do while I myself am not feeling the heat of it, the sacrifice of it, the struggle of it. So the type of organizations that become successful, just like in the Battle of Badr, that earn divine assistance is the type of battle when the leaders of that struggle say that I stand with you. I'm on the front lines with you. I'm side by side with you. I don't take my privilege and try to use it above you for my own personal gain, but that I put my privilege on the line to make sure that we progress in this fight. And when those leaders have that kind of thinking, that kind of mentality, combined with the understanding that their resources were little, that they were a few, 300 against 1,000, and that they had just a few arms, just a few camels, a few swords, as opposed to a well-established, well-funded group of Quraysh that were backed by a number of other tribes. Allah told them, listen, that it's not just the matter of your resources. It's just not the matter of what's in your hand. You are not the minority as they would make you feel. It's that when Allah is with you, you are the majority. That when faith is your foundation, you are the majority. That you are not just some rebel group who's rebelling against the society. No, actually, you are the truth and they are the rebels. And as Martin Luther King would remind us, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And so in this moment that we're in Ramadan, where we're being reminded, whether you're rich or poor, whether ethnicity you come from, whatever level you are, we're fasting together. We're experiencing the heat and the hunger together. We're experiencing the sacrifice together. Because that kind of combination leads to divine assistance, which is what happened in the Battle of Badr. Allah literally sent angels from on high to stand with them, to fight with them. And it didn't end until they were victorious. As Allah says in the Quran, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مُؤْمِنُونَ, the believers must win. That this is an ongoing, this phrase, the verbiage in it, saying that this isn't something from the past, that is consistent. The believers must win. And so for us, it's a matter that we keep the faith, that we remain believers. And as this Ramadan would teach us, it teaches us the compassion for others, those who don't know when they're going to break their fast, those who don't know when their hunger would end, those who don't know when their thirst for rights, for their basic human rights will come, those who don't know when their thirst for justice, when they're still holding their breath on verdicts, whether or not a verdict in the case of murder will come back guilty or not, when we're still holding our breath on that, when we're still afraid to breathe, when we all can't breathe, holding our breath for whether or not justice will be won, then we continue this fight. We continue this struggle. We continue to lock arm in arm, continue to be compassionate, continue to educate and spread knowledge, continue to fight for social justice, to fight and be concerned about the rights of others. And so for CARE Washington, I just want to say congratulations. Congratulations for not being the people who see the path and who sit back on the way and say, well, this is the path. The path is, mercy and compassion and justice. This is it. I can guide you toward it like a museum guide, as opposed to you understand that the path is something that you traverse on. It's something that you continue to walk on. It's something that you continue to move forward on. And that as you find people who've fallen on the wayside along that path, that you be a means to pick them up, that you remove the obstacle in their way or that which has hobbled them. You even care enough to carry them if necessary. Congratulations on the work that you've done this year. I ask those who are listening now or later during the recording that you donate, that you give to a cause that's worthy, that you literally put your money where your mouth is, put your resources where your heart is, and support the organization that's progressing us all forward. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak.
Wa alaikum salam, Ramadan Mubarak. Jazakallah khair, Sada Aisha Prime. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for those thought-provoking and powerful words. Your words were truly impactful, and I'd like to reiterate something that resonated with me. When we talk about our path forward, we are not just taking an opportunity for us to share with you all about the exciting work that we're doing here at CARE Washington, but to celebrate with you as we turn the page on this next chapter for our organization, community, and our country. Because bending the arc of the moral universe towards justice requires both vigilance and hope. And CARE Washington is committed to doing this work together with you all. So please consider giving your Zakat eligible donation to CARE Washington at the link on the chat below or at the QR code on the background behind me, because CARE Washington will never stop fighting and defending Muslims in this country. So please don't stop supporting us, because we're just getting started. Our next speaker is another example of how our team is expanding. Our community outreach fellow here at CARE Washington, with an emphasis to grow, maintain, and continue to develop CARE's community presence in Washington State. She is a human rights activist who for years advocated against the systematic oppression of Muslims worldwide, and raised awareness on the oppression of the Uyghur Muslims in East Turkestan. So please join me in welcoming our very own Aiden Anwar.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, I want to say a heartfelt thank you to Sada Aisha Prime for that amazing speech. I got goosebumps multiple times throughout, and even started tearing up especially when she said, when Allah is with you, you are the majority. May Allah bless you immensely, Sada Aisha. I'd like to first start off by giving a quick background of who I am and why I proudly work for CARE Washington. I'm an ethnic Uyghur Muslim, and my family hails from East Turkestan, a nation that's been under the occupation of China since 1949, and where currently millions have been arbitrarily detained in concentration camps and prisons. Right now, I have over 90 relatives missing in East Turkestan, with dozens in these camps and prisons, and with absolutely no knowledge of whether they are alive or dead. In these camps, they are forced to denounce their ethnicity, their faith, and are subject to torture and death. For my relatives who are not in these camps, Chinese state officials live in their homes, often even encouraged to even sleep in the same bed as them, to monitor their religious and political activities. My relatives don't even have the freedom to observe the holy month of Ramadan like we do, and rather are forced to show that they are not fasting by being forced to eat in the camps or prisons or in their work/school places. Practicing Islam is completely forbidden, to the point where even saying Allah or God is forbidden, and has to be replaced by the Chinese president named Xi Jinping, or the CCP. So if you want to say Inshallah, meaning God willing, you have to replace God with Xi Jinping. So you have to say Xi Jinping willing or CCP willing. China has also used active measures to erase the next generation of Uyghurs through sterilization efforts. And the birth rate alone in East Turkestan has decreased by 49% the past 2 years alone due to forced sterilization of both Uyghur men and women. So why am I taking this time to say all this? It's because China justifies this genocide by claiming Uyghurs and other Turks of East Turkestan are terrorists or potential terrorists. The Chinese government sent one of my extended uncles to a camp for a few years and then sentenced him to 15 years of prison because he visited the United States in 2014 to attend my cousin's wedding, which in the eyes of the Chinese government is a potential act of terrorism because going abroad exposes one to quote unquote dangerous diasporic ties. China has been using the US-led war on terror to justify their actions, claiming that Islam is a quote unquote virus and must be cleansed from their brains of Uyghurs, cleansed from the brains of Uyghurs. And by the way, these are exact words used by the Chinese government. This has made me passionate about fighting against false narratives of Muslims, Islamophobia, genocide, and the global usage of the US-led war on terror to justify crimes against humanity. And that's why the work we do at CARE Washington is so important. Advocacy starts in our local communities. Our outreach team works to ensure that CARE's work is accessible and known to all of Washington State, not just the Seattle area. We do this by collaborating and connecting with community mosques, organizations, and individual community members all across Washington State to make their voices heard. And I'd like to remind you that the needs of the Muslim community vary across different neighborhoods and cities. Places like Yakima, which was where I am now, Spokane, and the Tri-Cities are more isolated, are more politically conservative, and have less resources and support for the Muslim community. I can attest to a couple stories that have taken place here in Yakima alone during my short time here since August. Just yesterday, as I was shopping with my husband at the grocery store, I saw a man casually wearing a vest with 2 guns flashing openly on each side. A hijabi friend of mine here in Yakima also told me she never goes inside the store anymore after a man went up behind her in an aisle of Walmart last October and whispered in her ear, "F Muslims." She froze, didn't look behind to see who it was out of shock and fear, put down the items she was looking at, ran to her car, cried, and told herself she's never going anywhere alone. And she hasn't been. She's been using pickup services now. While CARE Washington can't prevent racists from being racist, we can provide the emotional support and legal resources to our brothers and sisters who face this kind of harassment in the rural parts of our state. And we need them to know that CARE Washington has their back. And that's why I am over here in Yakima doing the work that I'm doing. And that's why we are expanding our network to have CARE Washington representatives in all corners of our state. Your donation means that we can continue doing the work necessary to fight against the narratives that dehumanize Muslims abroad and right here at home. CARE Washington is a vital resource for everybody, no matter where they live, and people who live in Central and Eastern Washington need this resource more than anyone. I'm humbled to be doing this work in Yakima and grateful for all your support growing CARE Washington into a truly statewide organization. Thank you, and I hope you guys can and donate to the best of your ability. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much, Aiden, for sharing your story and for being vulnerable with us. We're super grateful to have you on our team, an outspoken human rights activist and working in Yakima to do the work necessary to help and alleviate the issues that Muslims worldwide are going through. And like you said, we can't prevent racist attacks from happening, but CARE Washington does our best to defend and protect Muslims across our entire state. Next, I will be bringing back Imran to talk more about, the work that we do and why you should consider giving your zakah eligible donation to CARE Washington.
Jazakallah khair, Najma. This was an amazing event, and so much can be taken from what Ustada Aisha Prime said during the course of the event today. And one of the things that really just resonated in my head is we're all in this heat and in this fight together. So just consider that during the remainder of your Ramadan. We're here, you see our team, you've seen our team today during the Meet the Team session, and you see what an amazing, diverse, well-rounded and brilliant team that we have here working on the front lines for you. But we're in this fight with you. We know that you're marching alongside us. The fact that you took the time out of your Saturday while you're fasting, many of you are fasting. So, spending your time being alongside us, hearing from us, it's truly appreciated. And, it's something that's really appreciated. And I'm proud to be part of this community. And alhamdulillah, we've seen some donations start rolling in. I know, in a virtual event, it's not going to be a perfect system where we're going to have a tracking mechanism up, but we've started seeing some start rolling in. So I would just definitely reiterate, we know that the last 10 nights of Ramadan are starting tomorrow night. So, definitely, if you're planning on giving this Ramadan, make CARE Washington part of your giving plan. For those of you who've donated in a lump sum already, consider also donating on a month-to-month basis. We're entering a very vital time in the history of this country and for the Muslim community as well. Even though the Trump era is behind us, we can't think as though things are just going to be perfect. We've seen calls for help from leaders within this community in the past week to 10 days alone. saying that they're having troubles, they're being stopped at airports and they're being profiled and things of that nature. If you don't have a CARE Washington that's strong, that has this legal team that's well funded, that's expanding, that's taking these, immigration cases and so on and so forth, who are these people going to go to? Are they going to have to pay out of their pocket? Many people who come to us for help cannot pay for these legal services. And we're doing amazing work. Najma hasn't sold herself as much as she should, but she's done amazing work with our youth. Our youth advocacy, committee has done an amazing job. I don't know if you caught their Ramadan program, but it was a great job. It was put together by our youth advocacy committee. One of our strategic goals for this upcoming year is to create a pipeline of talent in this Washington state community, whether that's through volunteer opportunities, whether it's exposing our youth to enriching opportunities when it comes to social justice and educating them about civic engagement, creating internship opportunities, which we've historically done, but we're going to continue to do, and creating jobs for people who want to get into this work. So CARE Washington is the best organization that's set up for this type of work moving forward. And you can see from our great team that this is a worthy cause. Like I said, there's tons of ways to give. You can give through your employee matching program, through your corporation. You can donate stocks to us. You can do a monthly donation, tons of different ways. You can do it and if you've already given, we know that everybody has limited resources and it's tough times financially as well, but use your social media as well. Like get out there on Facebook if it's possible. Consider uplifting or creating a fundraiser for CARE Washington during these last 10 nights of Ramadan as well. Every single dollar counts in trying to push forward and reaching that goal. And so with that being said, I'll close out and I'll hand it back to our great MC Najma, but Jazakallah khair everybody for attending and hopefully donating today, and definitely spread the word, share the video once it's done, and we'll see you soon, inshallah, as the pandemic starts to let up. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Imran. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you to each and every one of you who has joined us on Zoom and on Facebook today. And thank you to those who could not make it but donated anyways. I hope we can continue to pick up this momentum, because the support of our community is what pushes us forward. CARE Washington will never stop fighting and defending Muslims in Washington state. So please don't stop supporting us, especially in these last 10 nights. If you have any questions about your donation or need assistance, please email our Senior Programs and Operations Manager, Dr. Noor Al-Sadeh, NALSALEH@care.com, and she'll also put it in the chat down below. But thank you all so much for joining us again, and Ramadan Mubarak.